Good morning. I'm Nancy McSherry Jensen. I'm here with Sarah Denwald from the Swing Shift, and we have once again our Hangout Habits. These are weekly programs with topics and speakers that are designed to help you get into the consistent habit of moving your job search forward. We drop these once a week, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Today, we'll be talking about hiring processes and DEI trends. And we've got Mikaela from Reverb joining us. Before we talk with Mikaela, we just want to give you the heads up about some things from our end. We do have an accountability program. If you are interested in working in a small group with other people who are interested in moving their job search forward, we have a great option for you. We just kicked off our January cohort, and we'll have another one starting up late winter, early spring. So go check out our website for more information there. If you are looking for more information on LinkedIn and personal brand, we do have a workshop on demand. And of course, we have our book, Back to Business, which is just now available, as well as an e-course where we walk you through all of the lessons from Back to Business. You can go to our website or anywhere that books are sold. You can also look at backtobusinessbook.com. Enough of that. We're here to talk with Mikaela Kiner. She's the founder and CEO at Reverb, which is a human resource firm. She's also the author of Female Firebrands. Mikaela's career has really spanned the range of major companies in the Pacific Northwest. She's worked for Microsoft, for Amazon. She's taken global assignments. And most recently, she's created her own firm where she's providing resources for small and medium-sized companies. She's really knowledgeable about the notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as what is happening recently in hiring practices. We're really delighted to have her here. Mikaela, welcome. Welcome to our Hangout Habits.
Thank you so much, Nancy and Sarah. It's really great to be here with you today.
I'm so excited to have a conversation with you about things that you're hearing and experiencing from your clients regarding current hiring practices, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion trends. And I always say that because we never know. Do people know what DEI means? The first thing, let's talk, the biggest thing in terms of online trends, obviously, is online interviewing. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing here? Yes, we all know what's happening in Zoom or Teams or whatever your online tool is, but beyond that.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the biggest trend is online everything, which pretty much sums it up right now. It's really interesting. And just for some context, most of our clients are in the startup and scale up size. Right. So just to let people know. Right when COVID hit and people settled into the fact that we're going to be working virtual and remote for the foreseeable future, we started getting these questions about how do we interview and hire, how do we onboard, et cetera. And then after companies got some of that experience under their belt, we circled back to ask them, so what are you seeing, right? What are you seeing that's different? What are you seeing that's the same? And really interesting, we heard largely from our clients that the interview process, although it was now over Zoom or Teams, the interview process itself didn't feel all that different, but where they felt like they really had to make a lot of tweaks was in the onboarding. So the interviewing, whether they were doing a one-on-one interview or a small group or a panel interview, they felt like that actually translated pretty seamlessly, right? There was no more travel. It's interesting that platforms like Zoom not only replaced travel, but replaced phone calls. I think we've all experienced those things that we would have just done over the phone. Now it's like 100% video. Probably at some point, people are going to pare back from that a little bit. But it just didn't change that much. Whereas the onboarding was where people got stuck about, how do we onboard this person who none of us have ever met them? They've never met us. How do we help them understand our culture and values? How do we help them assimilate? So
Right.
that was where we heard companies struggling more.
And can you talk, since not everybody knows what onboarding means?
So onboarding is, let's say I'm fortunate enough to get to join Nancy and Sarah at their company. So I accept my offer, and then we have a start date. Let's say it's today because it's the 1st of February. And how are you going to get me the information that I need to get to know my team, get to know my manager, get to know what's important at this organization, figure out, what are my goals? What does it take for me to be successful around here? If I need to get in touch with Sarah, do I Slack her? Do I text her? Do I send her an invite? Right? All of these norms that we don't even think about because we're so accustomed to them. It can be really derailing for someone when they're new not to have that information. They can get stuck, they can move more slowly, they could potentially have a negative experience joining your company because they feel like, I don't know how to navigate this place. And so that whole process of getting your new hire started and ramped up efficiently and effectively, we talk about as onboarding. And it's not just day one, week one. We can think about onboarding and even in terms of what's happening in your first 30, 60, or even 90 days that's helping you really integrate and become successful in your new job at your new company.
And some of those things I think are when it's an in-person interaction, it's very implicit because you're walking around and you're bumping into people in the hallways and asking folks, well, how do I file an expense report? Where do I go for any number of things? I mean, you would, in theory, have a conversation with your manager in the hallway about, well, let's talk about what my 30, 60, 90-day goals are. And now it's going to be a much more explicit conversation. Has the teams that you've worked with, how have you gone to get those things which are in many ways just in people's heads out into a formalized process?
Yeah. One of the best practices, if companies don't already have this, is what you might call a launch plan or an onboarding plan. I
Hmm.
remember when I joined Amazon, I got this multi-page launch plan, and I literally carried that thing around with me for my first 90 days and would
Did
check
you?
off. Oh yeah, it was like my Bible,
Yeah.
and oh, I went to that training, or I met with that person, or I, signed up to use this tool or this app. So I think creating one of those that you give not only to the new hire, but to everybody who's supposed to be part of their plan. So for instance, you would send it to Sarah and let her know, hey, Mikaela's joining. Here's what she's going to be doing. By the way, she's going to meet you in her first week, and here are the kind of things you two should be talking about.
Hmm.
Right. So those plans, I think, are they're critical, and they really help the manager create a thoughtful process, also help that new hire be more self-sufficient because they can look down and say, oh, here's what I need to do next. Here's who I need to meet.
Yeah.
Another thing, just translating culture to this new person who's sitting at home at their desk where they were sitting last week when they worked for a
Right.
different company
Yeah.
is extremely important. And we've heard of interesting things like founders and CEOs maybe creating a quick video about the culture that they can share with the new hire. If your company is small enough, the founder or CEO might call and welcome each new hire, or join if you're having a group of people on board together. Maybe joining that meeting for a few minutes, and just, it's so important when we hear from senior leaders and we hear from the CEO, that's going to stick with us. So maybe having them address the new hires early on. The last one I think is a buddy. You mentioned, Nancy, like it used to be, hey, I can just turn over my shoulder, ask a question. Everything feels more formal now when you have to schedule
Yes.
time to ask somebody something. So having that buddy that's just like, this is the person you can ask, whatever, that's that small question. How do I file an expense report? Or how do I let people know if I am leaving for a doctor's appointment? Whatever it is,
Right.
that maybe you don't want to bother your manager with all those questions.
I think, and we've talked with a whole bunch of people who have taken jobs recently, and they report that the onboarding has been at best awkward. So
Yeah.
I think asking proactively, if you're somebody who's just gotten a job and you're onboarding, asking for that informal peer. They're not really a mentor. They're more of a peer resource, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was also going to say, Mikaela, would you, for the job searcher, would you recommend them asking as they get more towards the end of the interview loop, what is your onboarding process look like? So, I mean, best case, they at least know what they're getting into. If it is going to be chaos, they can kind of sense that and be prepared for it. And worst case, they can say, wait, maybe this isn't a good place for me, before they make that final decision. I think that the one thing you talked about, how anyone can be completely confused about what to do or where to go on their first day, even if they've been working continuously. And we have a lot of people in our community who've had breaks and think they're the only ones who don't know what to do, or if it's Slack or text, or, so I think that's really good to call out that everyone has these issues if the onboarding process is chaotic. And so don't feel bad if you don't know, just make sure that you're asking those questions, I think.
Yeah, I encourage people, as you do when they're searching for a job, gather as much information as possible and do what you choose to with it. If you use that to say this isn't right for me, if you use that to say this is something I need to be prepared for. The other thing is individuals can use this as a bottoms up. Let's say your company doesn't have a launch plan. You can create your own list of questions, right? What are my 30, 60, and 90-day goals? Who are some important people in the company that you suggest that I meet with? How often should I schedule a one-on-one with my manager, right? So in a way, we can build it as a grassroots tool if it's missing from the top down.
Yeah.
I think that's great guidance. That's great guidance. Hey, I had another question. Right now, a lot of people are both hiring and looking for roles, and they're not taking the physical location into account in the short term. And people are getting jobs because right now that seems to not be a factor. Because vaccines are rolling out, and that they're in the next 6 to 12 months there is going to be more of a return to what many people call the before times. What's your perspective on evaluating those physical locations, both short term and long term? I'd love to hear what you think about this.
Yeah. I mean, my first wish, I suppose, is for the employer. So if you're an employer, I wish very much that you are putting some thought into this question of what is your workplace of the future? Are you asking everyone to return to an office or a set of offices? Are you telling everyone that they can work remote? Are you hiring work from anywhere jobs, meaning it's got to be permanent work from anywhere. I can't hire you, Nancy, and say it's work from anywhere. And then in 6 months say, okay, but now we're returning to the office. You need to show up downtown in Seattle because, maybe you're in Arkansas. I don't know. So employers need to really be thinking long-term about those plans, the strategies, and the implications. If you're the job seeker, again, I think this is where that importance of what questions you're asking during the interview. So if you're saying, hey, can I work from anywhere? And the answer is yes, do some of that probing to understand, well, what is your future plan? Have you kept your offices? Are you expecting most people to return to your offices? Are you rolling out some kind of a hybrid model? I know a lot of employers don't have all the answers, but many employers, I think, directionally know because of their culture and because of what they have found to be successful. They know sort of what's possible and what's not possible. We've actually talked to a lot of smaller employers who have already decided, for instance, it's completely hybrid. It's up to each individual. We'll have a drop-in space, but if you want to be remote, part-time or full-time, that's fine. So just try to get a sense of how far into the future they're looking and what's in their culture that suggests, are they really going to be hybrid work from anywhere, or are they really one day going to call everybody back to the office?
Right. Because Sarah and I are now remote. She lives in Oregon. I know.
I don't even know if I knew that. I can't remember.
It's new.
Pandemic move. Yeah. Family.
Yeah. Okay. So we're experiencing it short term here. We're hearing it from people as they're looking at jobs, and they're excited to get the offer. And there's also that level of skepticism about, well, am I going to be asked to move? So I think this is really excellent guidance, both on the corporate side and on the the candidate side, because you want to know. And if you say, you know what, 18 months from now, I'm down for a move, great, great. But just, I think asking those leading questions is really smart. I want to switch gears a little bit and look at things from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. How is that influencing who makes it through the candidate funnel, especially right now? And is it different than it was a year ago?
Yeah. It sure feels and sounds different in that I would say it used to be occasionally, for instance, employers would say, do you know someone who specializes in diverse hiring? For a particular role, we want to make sure we have a diverse set of candidates versus now. I feel like anytime I'm getting asked to recommend recruiters or recruiting firms, there is a focus on diversity. So that makes me hopeful, right? That kind of that bit has flipped, and this is not about selectively we need diversity or in certain roles we need diversity. This is about in all roles and across our organization, we need diversity. So that excites me. I'm optimistic about that one. I think employers are at various phases of looking at every part of that interviewing and hiring process and pipeline to say, how are we being more inclusive? How are we eliminating bias? Whether that's from how they write the job description, their automated tools that can help you make sure your language is inclusive. Again, finding recruiters who specialize in diversity recruiting, even being more thoughtful about who's on the interview panel. Do we have a diverse interview panel? Well, what if we're a really small team or company and we don't yet have the diversity that we want in our own team or company? People are asking that question, and some of the recommendations might be, is there a mentor, an advisor, a board member, right? Someone who's going to help you diversify your representation. Right. Because we know when a candidate comes through, if they don't feel included, if they don't see a single person who looks like them, they're much less likely to be interested in you, right? Forget your ability to find them. You will not attract or retain them if your organization looks too homogenous. I think people have also caught on, there's just been so much better research and examples lately. For instance, there's a piece of research that shows if there's only one person on your interview group who doesn't meet the majority profile, so let's say there's only one candidate who isn't a white male, their chance of actually getting through the interviews is still really slim, right? They are standing out. But if you start to have 2 and 3 diverse candidates on your slate, then the likelihood of your hiring those individuals goes up. So I do think employers are getting smarter, more thorough, and more thoughtful when it comes to diversity hiring overall.
Yeah, and that is encouraging, because you're right. It's hard to be the only person of your gender or your orientation or your race, or whatever that is. It's hard to be the first, and it's hard to be the only. How, keeping those things in mind, when people who are looking to, switch roles or careers or get back into the workforce, how can they make themselves stand out in a way that's going to make them be more hireable, knowing that this diversity, equity, and inclusion trend in many ways works in favor of non-traditional candidates? What are some things they can do to kind of keep moving that forward?
Yeah. Well, the best thing for any job searcher, I always believe, is an introduction or referral. We just know that automated systems, they're not awful, they're just imperfect. And if people don't have this experience, when you apply online, it's uncertain whether the recruiter or hiring manager ever sees your resume. If they're getting a lot of applicants and they're having to search on keywords, you may or may not come to the top. So you might think you're being rejected. In fact, people just aren't seeing you. Right. So that's my first tip, absolutely, for everyone. The other is, I think people used to be very shy about putting certain things in their resume if that was the fact that they had a career break, potentially the reason for that career break. And I'm sure these are things that you advise on. I find much more people are open to that. I see on resumes, was home from X to Y, raising my children or looking after my family. And frankly, if that is off-putting to a company, I can assure you that's not a company where you want to work. For instance, if you're a working mom, right? Like you want someone who is open-minded. And so I wouldn't be afraid to include things like that on your resume.
We talked with a woman that goes along with what you're saying, Mikaela. She was VP of HR at a really large insurance company back east. And she was saying that she had a resume across her desk and the woman had been out for 10 years, so a long time. And she had put her proudest accomplishment was those 10 years. And that just, again, not only was she not trying to hide anything, she was actually emphasizing, no, this is the thing I'm most proud of. And Ellen, the VP, was like, she got hired. She's like, I loved that. It was unapologetic. It was, just so refreshing to see.
Yeah. I think that's great. On our team, because we have consultants on our team,
Right.
we have a lot of part-time moms on our team, right? These are people who they are senior, they are talented, they want to do interesting, challenging work, and they want time for their families, right? And what we can offer them is a 20-hour week or a 30-hour week. You can take a month off, you can take the summer off, you can, whatever, it's consulting. And on our staff, we had 2 different women who had worked for us on a part-time basis. Actually, the first one was the mother of young kids, wanted, again, a great part-time role. She happened to be relocating and she said, I realized that this is a great opportunity. I have another friend. She's a mom with young kids. She's looking for a part-time role. Can I introduce you? And, she ended up being the successor. And so, yeah, I think this is great, right? And we could go on and on about moms, being underestimated and et cetera. I have 2 teens, so definitely been there. But yeah, I think the net of it is the things that candidates used to be shy about because they felt they were going to be penalized for those things, rightfully so. They're now able to share those really proudly, and it's benefiting them, which is just such a great turnaround. I mean, not only from 15, 20 years ago, but even from 5 years ago.
Right.
I would agree. Mikaela, we've taken a lot of your time. What is your guidance for people who are looking right now? What's your if you had a final word of advice for folks who are either looking to switch or looking to come back? What's the guidance that you would offer them, given what you're seeing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think we need to be a little bit more thoughtful right now, just because, obviously global pandemic, global economic near collapse. So I like to tell people, look for the companies and industries that are thriving. As much as there are businesses and industries that have been hit really hard by the pandemic, there are innovators, there are new types of business, there are new startups that have established themselves either directly in response to the pandemic, or if you think of bigger companies, someone like Netflix, where it just happened to be a windfall, right? Because we're all sitting home watching Netflix. So I would say that, be thoughtful. I'll give you 2, even though you asked for 1. The other thing I tell people is this, which is no matter who you are, look at the lists, like best employers in your city, best employers in your state, best employers for working moms. I don't care if you're a guy, a dad, a mom. To me, when companies make it onto those lists for the right reasons, it's because they're flexible, it's because they're humane, it's because they have great values. And so I always encourage people, hey, if you're looking, there might be companies on those lists that weren't top of mind for you, or maybe you didn't hear of them, you didn't realize they were in your area, but those are a great place to kind of get the juices flowing and think about some opportunities that might have passed you by otherwise.
And I think this is a good, if you're looking because perhaps your industry has imploded, which many have, it's a good opportunity to assess what those transferable industries and your transferable skills are. This is a good time to do it. And I think those are really great, tangible things for people to do. Sarah, do you have anything else to add on this?
Nope. It's great.
All right.
Nice.
All right. And of course, I have to remind people that Mikaela is the author of Female Firebrands. If you're interested in reading some super compelling stories about women who have just gone off in directions they could not have anticipated, and you want that for inspiration for yourself, we highly recommend you take a read. And I think you have a podcast now, don't you?
I do. I have 3 seasons of the Female Firebrands podcast that are up and running, and we will be kicking off season 4 in March.
Awesome.
Excellent. That's such great news. Who could have thought that your little consulting company would take off like this?
Not me, for sure, not me.
Well,
Congratulations to both of you on the book.
Thanks.
I'm so thrilled for you. I'm so grateful for everything you do. You are helping so many women. We have benefited directly from some of the women who you have helped get opportunities, including with Reverb, but really just congratulations to you both on all the success.
Thanks. We're looking to make it equitable for everyone. So, all right, Mikaela Kiner from Reverb HR. Thank you so much for joining us. Hold on one sec.